Hi. We tried doing this as a live stream and it was a hot mess, so we're just going to do it this way, even though it's just a recorded video and I prefer to edit those and I prefer to lavish some care upon them, but we'll just do it this way and post it afterwards because, honestly, live interaction is like many of those things in the internet. It feels a bit elvish, which is to say that I, like the elves of the Third Age of Middle-earth, have watched the fading of things in the internet and the level of a presence that people have, and I too am less present, like those spirits of elves that refuse to leave Middle Earth for the halls of Mandos. You just slowly become less present unless you go into the West. That's the doom. It seems like the internet brings on a lot of those feelings of melancholy lately. That's just an opinion, but this video is not about that. I want to consider the question of equipment chapters in role-playing game manuals. Now, if we consider the manual as an anatomical organism that reproduces the game, that's kind of what it's determinant of its love, the amount of adoption that's going to find, or whether it really does the thing it seeks to do, which is to create role-playing games at tables, right? So it is the genetic material of the game. And Aloy and I have shared a narrative over the past about the importance of monster manuals in defining the setting, in creating an imagined circumstance where the characters find themselves opposed, or where there are obstacles that the characters are going to oppose, and both the obstacles and the characters' abilities are congruent mechanically and within the imagined headspace of the game. There's a congruence, and that the monster manual helps realize that. I've also spoken about how the grimoire, the spellbook of fantasy games, plays a similar role, and one day I'll finally make a video about how the bank of starships in Traveler, the adventure class starships, is, that is really the bread and butter of that setting. That may be the thing that we know the most about, are those starships with under 1,000 displacement tons that ply the space lanes of the Imperium. I think we know more specifics about that than anything else in the entire Traveler universe. Good on them for that. But this video is not about that. It's about personal equipment, about the down and the dirty of asking the question of characters that have a backpack with 5 longswords in a bundle, wrapped up with a skin, versus an extra riding horse, versus a couple of men at arms for a couple days, hired for a couple days. That's an opportunity cost, both in terms of gold pieces, in terms of conspicuousness, in terms of the amount of time that the character spends and the group spends shopping for the thing sometimes is a meaningful cost. And I put it to you that I'm not sure that the same amount of thought about the organism that is the assumed setting, that is the game as it seeks to be realized in the world, I'm not certain that we're paying the same amount of mind and effort and consideration as we are in so many other places, which is to say, in character creation, every game manual knows that this is the prototype of what the characters are when they emerge for their first adventure. That's the whole point of character creation. That's the whole point of the character chapter, is to make characters that are going to end up together and doing stuff together, and the abilities that they come out of that process with, and the capabilities, and also the conflicts in their life or what they're seeking. The corpus of play is somehow relevant to that, and it goes in circles. Obviously, the players are prompted, and the players can come up with new ideas, but then the GM, through the corpus of the rules, can then resolve that. The new stuff the game can respond to in the physical matter that the game has. That would be nice if the game at least thought about these things, right? It's nice when the game has an answer to these things. Sometimes the game's answer is, don't worry about it. You're the game master. Who cares? So my thoughts about equipment chapters, how much world building and whether they really carry meaning in the same way as other parts of the game manual. Because, well, for one, it's always been overshadowed by spells in the traditional fantasy milieu, as in spells are more decisive. They are more certain in their outcome authority. You cast a spell, the saving throw is made or not made. It spells out right there on the spell what happens. It's super easy to do things using a spell versus other means. So of course you're going to use a spell, and you're going to overlook the equipment. An Entangle spell is a druid spell that's very reproducible from 3rd edition 3.x D&D. You can get it on a wand, and it's an incredibly packed and repeatable source of area denial and the ability to flee. You know, it's like popping smoke. It's super useful so long as you're outdoors. And it's one of those things that a wand with 50 charges on is going to be super decisive compared to things like Tanglefoot bags. Tanglefoot bags are, they're at the store, but what you really want are those wands of Entangle. And that's what's in the equipment chapter. So how long does the equipment chapter stay relevant? Is it ever relevant? Is it something that the player can kind of make dreams about? Is it something where if the character has a pile of 1,000 gold pieces, are the things in that chapter that you generally are understood to be able to acquire through some either off-camera or mechanically abstract process that's pretty doable? Do those things hold a candle to the rest of the game, to the other ways that you can get things done? Because you're not going to do those things. Those things are never going to live and breathe within the sessions, the time that you spend at the tabletop, unless the stuff is composed in a way where it's going to matter and people are going to want it. Or they're going to consider, like, hey, 5 long swords, 75 gold pieces, or a riding horse, 75 gold pieces. Is that something that you're really ever going to think about? I don't know. And does the game actually help you get to that choice? And then does it making that choice, how much friction is involved in making that choice and getting it done? Nobody likes shopping time. Going around shopping around the city is a classic way that groups and sessions spin out of control and, engagement drops in actual real world games. I have my thoughts and I have a narrative about how to get past it or just don't do it. This video is not about that, but suffice it to say that's a form of the friction that can arise from trying to use the equipment chapter. Here's the big example that's resting in my mind that came as a shower thought several days ago. I gotta drink some coffee first before I tell you about this one. So here now in 2024, if you haven't noticed, there's the largest conventional war ever since World War II happening, and all of the weapon systems spent the last 80 years developing or whatever are now finding their interactions, and it's a full battlefield. And with it, most of us have become intimately familiar, to certain degrees. Me more than others, perhaps. One of the places I've been is beholding this war like I'm holding a Palantir, like a mad Numenorian, trying to flirt with whether I'm gonna run over there and get underneath the bullets and bombs, because that's where the fun is. Here's the thing, though. I don't know. Especially Star Wars role-playing games are really reflecting the reality of what's decisive in a war zone, in a place of armed conflict. We're very familiar now in 2024 that if there's a helicopter coming for you and your buddies, that are driving around in a couple Jeeps in the woods trying to blow up an Imperial prison camp, you need to reach for a Stinger missile, or you get under your thermal cloak and just hope that you get hidden. And you get far enough away from the hot engine of your go-kart or whatever you drove up to the place in. This is what's going to make you live or die, is your thermal cloak. It is your choice of which of these things to use. How much are you going to choose between self-reliance, audacity, like let's win before they get here? That's the bread and butter of the experience of role-played warfare, I would say, at least in the real time. The aftermath of the trauma and so on. Maybe we could make games about that too. I don't know if anybody wants to play that. Probably do, but this video is not about that. Instead, I ask you the question of Stinger missile, a bazooka, AMRAAMs. If you're getting into the starfighter stuff where the starfighters fly at each other and go pew pew, AMRAAMs are definitely part of the Star Wars universe. Guided missiles that seek other starfighters, maybe less so than the Battlestar Galactica universe. If starfighter combat is something which the game is going to realize, and guided missiles, air-to-air missiles are going to emerge as a part of the game, how much friction is involved in using those items? And let me tell you something. In the Age of Rebellion RPG, we flirted momentarily with the process of trying to understand capital ships, and we flirted momentarily with squadrons of starfighters. But really, we came up against a couple of guided missiles, like maybe not even AMRAAMs, maybe just Sidewinders. And the mechanical complexity, the weight of that, surged so far above anything else in the equipment realm. even as it sought to be decisive, it sought to be kind of a meaningful, different thing. But it was such a shock pulling out all the information about how to use these Sinuiter missiles that I think we never really walked very close to that air-to-air combat realm again as a group, because we knew it was going to take a lot out of us. And maybe we didn't have enough time in our sessions that we budgeted a certain amount of time to play. And how much time it takes to actually do it starts to really influence whether anybody's going to indulge in seeing the doing of it unfold at the tabletop. I put it to you that this is a place where I think equipment chapters, they could be better. They're not at the same place as spellbooks, as monster manuals, as introductions of settings, and especially character creation chapters. They're just not regarded as an anatomically functional part of the being. Like, the reproductive success of RPGs could be influenced by their equipment chapter, but instead it's sort of this meaningless bit of plumage that varies. It varies without respect to whether the game is going to work or not. And because the game's gaze, it never turns especially towards that equipment chapter, in large part. There's some exceptions. I think that Conan 2.20 really did try to dig deeply into the difference between a dagger and a spear, for example. Like, you had to consider that in order to move on and play Conan. It was pretty weighty. It was almost as weighty as those guided missiles, but it wasn't kept in the background like those guided missiles until the second they pop up in your face as this giant mechanical boondoggle. Which isn't to say it wouldn't have been fun to figure out how to use those guided missiles. We just never did. We never had the full confidence to really be like, all right, let's lock on with the AMRAMs. Highway to the danger zone. We never went to the danger zone because the danger zone was also the spending all night trying to figure out some random mechanics in the book instead of seeing the story happen. Danger zone. Got it? Okay. I think that this is a consideration that it's time is long in coming. I'm curious about how, considering the achievement chapter is an RPG technique, I just want to validate, to finalize this, the fact that players, look at that equipment chapter when they're familiarizing themselves with the game. And it is a place where I, as a child, this is where I got immersed, and I wrote up my list of stuff that my guy was carrying in his backpack. Back when I didn't have people I would play with reliably, kind of like now. And I wasn't really playing a ton as a kid, but I definitely had my head stuck in that rules cyclopedia hardcore. The equipment chapter meant a lot to me. And it meant a lot, the experiences looking at that equipment chapter once I was playing, actually, a little later on, colored me. But I don't think it was out of a great deal of intention from the creator and the hand that was upon that equipment chapter. Let's get some hands on the wheel, folks. I think that monster manuals have hands on the wheel. I think the grimoires have hands on the wheel. And I have a question for you as the RPG technique, also from a game master's standpoint, from the world guy player, the player who is the world guy and referees type, that guy, his role playing. How do you get your hands on the wheel of that equipment chapter? And what are the techniques?